I never thought my marriage would end up like this. For years I believed we were solid. Stable jobs, nice house, dinner on the table, vacations twice a year. On the outside, we looked like the perfect couple, but inside, cracks had started, forming that I never truly noticed until it was too late. It all started one random Tuesday night. My wife sat across from me at the dinner table, playing with her food in silence. I could tell something was off. She cleared her throat and said almost too casually, "I think we should try something new in our marriage." I thought she meant a vacation, maybe a hobby, or even redecorating the living room. I had no idea she was about to drop a bomb that would turn my entire life upside down. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I want an open marriage." At first I laughed. I thought she was joking, making some wild suggestion to spice things up, but her face was stone-cold serious. My stomach dropped. I couldn't even process the words. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaky. She shrugged, avoiding eye contact. I feel like I need more freedom, more excitement. We've been together for so long, and I don't want to feel like I'm missing out." Her words cut deeper than any knife could. Freedom? Excitement? What was I then? A cage? A prison? I wanted to shout, to slam my fists on the table, to tell her she was insane. But instead I sat there frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was telling me she wanted to invite other people into our marriage. And the worst part? The way she said it, she sounded like she already knew I'd agree. She smiled faintly and added, "It doesn't mean we love each other any less. It just means we get to explore. Don't you trust me?" That last line burned into my brain. Don't you trust me? Of course I trusted her. But now I was beginning to wonder if I had been blind all along. I stared at her across that dinner table, and for the first time in years I realized something terrifying. I didn't actually know the woman I married. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words replaying in my mind like a broken record. "I want an open marriage. Don't you trust me?" I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was just going through a phase. Maybe she was bored. Maybe if I agreed, she would try it once, realize it wasn't what she wanted, and everything would go back to normal. But deep down, I knew the truth. Once that door opened, it could never be closed again. In the morning, I looked at her across the breakfast table. She was scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just shattered the foundation of our marriage with one sentence. I finally asked her, "Are you serious about this?" "They're about them other people." She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She simply looked up and said, "Yes. And I think if you really love me, you'll let me explore this. Otherwise, it feels like you're trying to control me." That word, control, stabbed me in the gut. Suddenly, I wasn't just a husband. In her eyes, I was a jailer, a man chaining her down, keeping her from living her true life. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say no. But there was this dangerous calm in her voice, this confidence that told me she had already made up her mind. Whether I agreed or not, she was going to do it. And then came the part that twisted the knife even deeper. She leaned forward, resting her hand on mine, and whispered, "You can do it too. Think of it as freedom for both of us." I pulled my hand away, disgusted. I wasn't interested in anyone else. I wanted her. But the look in her eyes made me realize something I had ignored for too long. She didn't feel the same way anymore. That was the moment I felt powerless, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the rocks below, knowing he was about to fall, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Still, against every fiber of my being, I nodded. "Fine. If that's what you want, we'll try it." She smiled. A smile that didn't look like love, a smile that looked like victory. And that was the first night I realized I had just lost control of my marriage. The following weeks were a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. It started small. She'd dress up more than usual, put on that perfume she hadn't worn in years, and leave the house with a casual, "Don't wait up for me." At first, she'd claim it was just drinks with friends, but soon she didn't even bother. Lying. The first time she walked back in at 2 in the morning, her lipstick smudged and her hair a mess, I felt something break inside me. She didn't even look guilty. She just tossed her purse on the counter and said, "You could have gone out too, you know." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake her and shout, "Do you even hear yourself? Do you realize what you're doing to us?" But instead I stayed silent, swallowing the rage burning in my chest. Nights became longer, colder. I'd lie in bed staring at the empty space beside me, imagining where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. Every car that drove past outside made my heart pound, hoping, praying, it was her finally coming home. The worst part? She was glowing. She laughed more, smiled more, carried herself like a teenager in love, and every time I saw that happiness on her face, it wasn't for me. It was for someone else. One night I tried to talk to her. "This isn't working," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't handle this." She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "You agreed to it. Don't act like I forced you." My blood boiled. Of course she had forced me. Not with threats, but with manipulation, with guilt, with that smug little smile that said she knew I'd never walk away. For the first time, I began to wonder, maybe I should see someone too. Not because I wanted to, but because I refused to sit here and watch her win this twisted game alone. If she wanted an open marriage, then fine. I'd give her one, but I had no idea that decision would change everything. I remember sitting alone in the living room one Saturday night. The clock ticked past midnight, and once again, my wife wasn't home. The silence in the house was suffocating. Every corner reminded me of what we used to have, and every tick of that clock reminded me that she was out there, exploring her freedom, while I rotted away like a fool. I picked up my phone, staring at it for what felt like hours. The thought disgusted me, but it wouldn't leave. If she can do it, why can't I? With shaking hands, I downloaded one of those dating apps. My heart pounded as I filled out the profile, my mind screaming that I was crossing a line I could never uncross. But another voice, a colder one, whispered, "She already destroyed the line, you're just catching up." The first few swipes felt wrong, almost dirty. Faces blurred by, conversations started and died within minutes. But then, there was her. Her smile was soft, her eyes kind. She wasn't flashy like the women I imagined my wife was chasing. She just seemed real. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. We exchanged a few messages, and unlike my wife's cold dismissiveness, this woman actually listened. She laughed at my jokes, asked about my day, and didn't make me feel like I was just another option on a list. That night, as I lay in bed alone, I realized something shocking. My wife's game had backfired. She opened the door thinking she would control everything. But she had just pushed me straight into the arms of someone who made me feel alive again. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning, because once I stepped through that door, there was no going back. Her name was Emily. I still remember the first time we decided to meet in person. My hands trembled as I buttoned up my shirt, the same way they used to on my very first date years ago. I felt ridiculous, like a teenager sneaking out behind his parents' back, except this time it wasn't teenage nerves. It was the fear of what this meant for my marriage and the quiet thrill of stepping into forbidden territory. When I walked into the cafe, she was already there, sitting by the window with a book in her hands. She looked up, and the second our eyes met, I felt something shift inside me. She wasn't intimidating, she wasn't trying too hard, she just smiled. Warm, genuine, and real. It was the kind of smile I hadn't seen in years, not from my wife, not from anyone. We talked for hours, about books, about work, about life. She listened, not the fake kind of listening where someone just waits for their turn to speak, but really listened. Every word I said mattered to her. She laughed at my stories, leaned forward when I spoke, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt seen. As the evening sun dipped low and the cafe lights dimmed, she reached across the table and touched my hand. That simple touch sent electricity through me, not because it was new or forbidden, but because it was gentle, genuine, and untainted by years of bitterness. When I finally got home that night, My wife was sitting on the couch, scrolling through, her phone barely glancing at me. She asked, "Have fun?" With a smirk that was half challenge, half mockery. I should have lied, I should have brushed it off. But instead I simply said, "Yes, I did." For the first time, I saw her smile. Falter. Just for a second. But it was enough. That was the moment I realized. She thought she was the one pulling the strings, but now, for the first time in this twisted game, I held a card she wasn't expecting. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I grew closer. What started as innocent conversations turned into late-night calls, shared secrets, and inside jokes that only belonged to us. She asked about my childhood, my dreams, my fears, things my wife hadn't cared to ask me about in years. Emily didn't just want the surface-level version of me. She wanted me. One evening after a long day at work, I met Emily at a quiet park. We sat on a bench watching the sun dip behind the trees. She leaned against my shoulder and whispered, "You deserve more than just being tolerated. You deserve to be loved." Her words cut deep, because I realized how starved I was for that kind of validation. When I got home, my wife was already there, sipping wine and pretending not to care where I'd been. But she couldn't hide it. The way her eyes darted to me, the tightness in her jaw, the way she asked too casually, "So, who were you with?" I smirked. For once, the power was mine. "A friend," I said simply, and her glass nearly slipped from her hand. It was subtle at first. The way she started dressing a little nicer when she was at home, the way she suddenly cared about cooking my favorite meals, or asked about my day with forced sweetness. She thought she could play the role of the perfect wife again, as if I hadn't noticed her little nights out. But the truth was clear. She wasn't worried about losing the marriage. She was worried about losing her control, and for the first time, I didn't care about hiding my happiness. I laughed louder, I smiled more, and I made sure she saw every bit of it, because now she was the one lying awake at night, wondering where I was, and with whom. It didn't take long for the cracks to appear. One night I came home later than usual. Emily and I had been out for dinner, and I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed that hard. My chest still ached from it when I walked through the door. My wife was waiting. Not lounging on the couch with a glass of wine this time, but pacing the living room like a caged animal. The second she saw me, her eyes narrowed. "Who is she?" she demanded, her voice sharper than I had ever heard. I raised an eyebrow, pretending confusion. "Who?" Her fists clenched. "Don't play. Dumb with me. You think I don't notice? The late nights, the stupid smile on your face when you check your phone. You've met someone." For a moment I almost laughed. The irony was too much. This was the same woman who dragged me into an open marriage, who told me I was being insecure, who promised she'd control everything, and now she was the one falling apart. I didn't give her the satisfaction of an answer. I just shrugged, hung up my jacket, and walked past her as if her accusations didn't matter. That silence stung worse than any confession could have. Later that night, as she slipped into bed beside me, I could feel her body stiff, restless. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't relax. Because for the first time, she was no longer the one holding the leash. She had built this game to make me weak. Instead, she had unleashed a version of me she could no longer predict or control, and by the look in her eyes, she finally realized it. The more time I spent with Emily, the less I recognized the man I used to be. She made me laugh again, made me feel valued, made me believe that maybe love didn't have to feel like chains. With her, I wasn't just a husband trying to survive his wife's rules. I was a man with choices, with freedom. One evening, Emily and I walked along the river, the city lights shimmering across the water. She held my hand without hesitation, and I didn't pull away. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed. I didn't feel like I was sneaking around. I felt alive. When I returned home, my wife was waiting at the table, her wine glass untouched. She looked at me with eyes that weren't smug or confident anymore. They were desperate. "We should spend more time together," she said softly, almost pleading. "Maybe take a trip. Just us." I stared at her, stunned by the irony. This was the same woman who once laughed in my face when I asked for her time. The same woman who told me she needed excitement and freedom. Now she wanted me back. I didn't say yes, I didn't say no. I just let the silence hang between us, and I could see it tearing her apart, because she finally understood the truth. She had opened a door she couldn't close, and now the man who used to beg for her love was slipping away into the arms of someone who truly wanted him. For the first time in our marriage, the balance of power had shifted, and she hated it. It started with little things. She began checking my phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd ask casual questions that weren't casual at all. So, working late again? Or, who keeps texting you this late? Her confidence had evaporated, replaced by a gnawing insecurity she couldn't hide. One night I walked through the door and found her sitting in the dark, waiting. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you love her?" The question hit me like a hammer, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I realized she already did. For years, she had held the upper hand, twisting me around with guilt and manipulation. Now the roles were reversed. She was the one begging, doubting, spiraling, and I was the one who didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked past her, set my keys on the counter, and poured myself a glass of water. The silence stretched unbearable. Finally, I said, "Funny. You didn't care who I loved when you opened the marriage." Her face crumpled. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. For the first time, she was speechless. That night, she crawled into bed beside me and tried to wrap her arms around me like she used to, but it felt forced, hollow. My mind wasn't with her anymore. My heart had already found its way somewhere else, and deep down she knew it. This wasn't just jealousy anymore. This was fear, because she was finally realizing that the marriage she thought she controlled was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Every moment with Emily felt like oxygen after years of suffocating. We'd cook together in her tiny kitchen, laughing as we spilled sauce on the counter. We'd go for late-night drives, windows down, music blasting, singing like two kids who didn't have the weight of the world pressing down on them. With her, I wasn't trapped in constant judgment or competition. I was free. One evening, as we sat under the stars in her backyard, Emily looked at me with soft eyes and whispered, "I don't want to just be your escape. I want to be your future." Her words echoed in my chest long after I went home. When I walked through the front door, my wife was waiting, dressed in silk, the table set with candles and wine. It looked like a scene out of a movie, the perfect wife trying to rekindle something that had been dead for years. She forced a smile. "I thought maybe we could start fresh, just the two of us." But the second she reached for my hand, I knew the truth. She wasn't doing this out of love, she was doing it out of fear, fear of losing me. Fear of losing the control she once held so tightly. I pulled my hand away gently and said, "You're too late." Her smile vanished. The color drained from her face. And in that moment, I saw it. The realization that she had played the game, but I had won. It finally happened one Friday night. I came home later than usual, my shirt still faintly carrying Emily's perfume. The second I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. My wife stood in the middle of the living room, her eyes wild, her hands shaking as she held my phone in her grip. "Who the hell is Emily?" she screamed, her voice cracking. For a second, I froze. She had gone through my messages. She had seen everything. Instead of panicking, I felt calm, almost relieved. The truth was out now, and there was no putting it back in the box. "She's the woman who listens to me, who respects me, who makes me feel alive," I said, my voice steady, her face twisted with rage and pain. "You're cheating on me," laughed bitterly. "Cheating? You're the one who begged for an open marriage. You're the one who thought you'd have all the fun while I sat here like a fool. Well, guess what? You lost." She staggered back as if I had slapped her. Tears welled in her eyes, but for once they didn't move me. She had broken our marriage long before Emily entered the picture. All I did was step through the door she had forced open. She dropped my phone on the floor and whispered, almost broken, "She's not better than me." I looked her dead in the eyes and said the words she never expected to hear. "Yes, she is." The silence that followed was deafening. After my words cut through the air, "Yes, She is. The silence that followed felt endless. My wife's legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch, clutching her face like she was trying to hold herself together. Her shoulders shook, and when she finally spoke, her voice was no longer sharp or smug, it was broken. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered, her tears staining the floor. "We can fix this. I'll change. I'll stop. Just don't throw this away." The irony nearly made me laugh. The woman who once flaunted her freedom, who smirked while walking out the door to see other men, was now on her knees, begging for the very thing she had destroyed. I stood there, watching her crumble, and for the first time I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no love. Just emptiness. I thought about Emily, about her laughter, her warmth, her kindness, and then I looked at the broken shell of the woman in front of me. She had made me believe I was powerless, trapped, dependent on her approval. But in reality, she had handed me the keys to my freedom the moment she forced this open marriage. Now she was begging, but it was too late. The game was over, and she had lost. When I woke up the next morning, the house was eerily quiet. For years, silence in our home had been filled with unspoken tension, but now it was different. This silence was heavy, suffocating, and tinged with something new: fear. My wife had barely slept. I knew it because I heard her tossing and turning all night, her muffled sobs echoing through the darkness. By sunrise, she looked exhausted, her eyes swollen, her face pale. She had always been the one holding herself like royalty, untouchable and smug. Now she looked like a dethroned queen, stripped of her crown, clinging to whatever scraps of dignity she had left. I poured myself coffee and for once didn't bother making hers. She came into the kitchen, clutching her robe tightly as if the fabric could shield her from the reality she had created. "We can fix this," she whispered again, her voice cracking. "We've been married too long to throw it away." I made mistakes, I know, but you're my husband. We can go to therapy, we can... I cut her off, my tone cold and steady. "You didn't make a mistake, you made a choice, over and over again. And now you're living with it." Her lips trembled. "I thought it would make us stronger, I thought..." "No," I snapped. "You thought you'd control me. You thought I'd never have the courage to find someone better. And now you're terrified because I did." Her tears flowed faster, and for the first time I felt nothing but a strange sense of power. For years I had begged for scraps of her affection. Now she was begging for mine. The irony was almost poetic. Emily's light versus my wife's darkness. Later that evening I met Emily again. I didn't hide it. I didn't sneak around. I texted her right in front of my wife and left without explanation. Emily greeted me with that smile, the one that felt like sunshine after a storm. We walked hand in hand, and as she talked about her day, I realized how stark the contrast had become. Emily's world was filled with warmth, laughter, and sincerity. My wife's world was nothing but control, bitterness, and now desperation. When Emily leaned against me, whispering, "I love being with you," it felt so natural, so effortless. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. Because why should I? My wife had gambled with our marriage. She had laid down the rules. And now she couldn't handle the consequences. Her attempts to win me back when I returned home. She had cooked my favorite meal, something she hadn't bothered to do in years. The table was set, candles lit, like some forced romantic gesture. Out of a movie, she greeted me with a trembling smile. I thought we could have dinner together, just us. I sat down, but the food tasted like ashes in my mouth, not because it wasn't good, but because it was empty, hollow, desperate. "Why are you doing this now?" I asked flatly. Her eyes welled again. "Because I don't want to lose you," I laughed bitterly. "You lost me the moment you begged. For an open marriage." She flinched like I had struck her. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I needed more. But I was wrong. You're the one I want. Please, just give me another chance." But her words rang false. It wasn't what she wanted. It was her control back. And she was realizing piece by piece that she'd never get it again. Over the next week, her desperation only grew worse. She started texting me constantly while I was with Emily. "Where are you? When will you be home? Please, just talk to me." She tried seduction, buying new lingerie, parading around the house like she still had power over me. But when I looked at her, I didn't see the woman I used to love. I saw the architect of my misery, the manipulator who thought she could shackle me forever. One night as I was leaving to see Emily, she blocked the door. Her eyes were wild, red with tears. "Don't go," she begged, clutching my arm. "Please, I'll do anything, just don't go to her." I pried her hand off, meeting her gaze with ice. "This isn't about her. This is about you finally realizing you destroyed what we had. And now you can't stand watching me build something better without you." She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, her voice hoarse. "Please, please don't leave me." But I did. I walked right past her, her cries echoing through the house, and for the first time I felt free. The breaking point came a few days later. I had just returned from a weekend away with Emily, my phone filled with pictures of us smiling, holding hands, living a life that felt real. My wife was waiting at the door, her face pale, her hands trembling. She had found the photos. "You love her," she whispered, her voice hollow. "Don't you?" I looked at her, at the woman who had mocked me, belittled me, pushed me into this nightmare of her own making, and I said the words that shattered her completely. "Yes, I do." Her knees buckled. She fell against the wall, gasping for air like the truth had physically crushed her. She begged, pleaded, cried, but nothing could change what had already happened. For years she had made me believe I was powerless. But in that moment she understood the truth. She had been the one who handed me the power all along, and now she was the one left broken, while I finally walked toward happiness. My wife once believed she held the strings, and that she could dictate the terms of my life, my love, my loyalty. But she never realized that control built on manipulation is nothing but an illusion. Now she was reduced to begging at my feet, a shadow of the woman she once pretended to be. And me. I had finally found someone who saw me, not as a pawn, not as a possession, but as a man worth loving. Part of me almost pitied her, almost. But the truth was simple. She created this storm, and I was done drowning in it. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every corner, every picture frame, every memory felt tainted by her lies, her manipulations, her arrogance. Even her voice, once familiar, once comforting, now grated on me like broken glass. She had become a ghost haunting the ruins of our marriage. But Emily was life. She was warmth, laughter, hope. Every time I looked into her eyes, I saw not the wreckage of the past, but the possibility of a future. The decision should have been hard, but it wasn't. It was the easiest decision I had ever made. Her last plea, the night I finally packed my bags, she was waiting at the door. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face pale. She looked nothing like the woman who once strutted around this house with smug confidence. She clutched my arm desperately. "Don't do this," she whispered, her voice raw. "I'll change. I'll give you everything you want. Just don't leave me." I pulled my arm away and met her gaze with the cold, unflinching truth. "You already had everything I wanted, and you threw it away." Her tears fell faster, her body shaking. "I made a mistake. Please, just one more chance." I shook my head. "No, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice, and now I'm making mine." The divorce papers. The day I handed her the divorce papers, she looked like she had been gutted. She sat at the table, staring at the documents as if they were a death sentence. "You can't do this," she muttered, her voice trembling. "We're meant to be together. You're my husband." I leaned forward, my voice steady, calm, final. "No, I was your husband. But you stopped being my wife the moment you decided your needs mattered more than our vows. You destroyed this marriage. And now I'm done paying the price for your selfishness." She broke then, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. But there was no satisfaction in it for me anymore, only closure. She had begged, she had pleaded, she had tried everything, and none of it mattered. Because love built on control isn't love at all. It's a prison, and I had finally broken free. A new beginning, walking out of that house for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in years. My chest wasn't weighed down by guilt or shame anymore. Emily was waiting for me outside, her smile warm, her arms open. When she hugged me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. "Are you sure?" she asked softly, searching my eyes. I kissed her forehead. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Together, we drove away, leaving behind the wreckage, the pain, the lies. The past was ashes, the future was ours. Her downfall, I heard later that my ex-wife tried dating again, but no one lasted. She had burned too many bridges, pushed too many boundaries, and destroyed the one person who ever truly loved her. Now, she spends her nights alone, drowning in the very freedom she once craved. She opened the marriage thinking she'd gain power, excitement, control. Instead, she lost everything, and I gained something she could never understand, real love. She thought she was clever. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she held all the cards. But in the end, she destroyed her own kingdom with her arrogance, and now, the man she once believed was powerless is living a life she can only dream of, while she's left behind begging for a past that will never return. Because the truth is simple. She opened the door. I walked through it, and I never looked back. If you were in my place, would you forgive her or walk away forever? Tell me in the comments below.